Today, more than ever, the silent suffering of men in the labyrinth of love remains an unspoken epidemic, a hidden wound festering beneath the surface of stoic facades. Society often champions a narrative of masculine invulnerability, subtly, almost imperceptibly, denying men the space to articulate their emotional pain, particularly within the tender, treacherous landscape of romantic relationships. They are taught, through countless subtle cues and overt expectations, to internalize, to absorb, to stand as unyielding pillars against the storm, even when the storm rages within their own hearts. This insidious conditioning creates a chasm, a profound loneliness where the deepest hurts are left to echo in solitude, unacknowledged, unhealed. This isn't merely a personal struggle. It's a collective shadow, a societal oversight that stunts emotional growth and prevents genuine connection, leaving many men adrift in an ocean of unspoken despair, their emotional needs dismissed, their vulnerabilities mistaken for weakness. Once, in a city cloaked in the perpetual twilight of its own ambition, lived a man named Arthur. He was an architect, crafting structures of steel and glass that touched the clouds, yet his inner world was a crumbling ruin. Arthur had met Alara during a brisk autumn, their connection a sudden, vibrant flame in the gathering chill. She was an artist, her spirit as free and untamed as the wild strokes of her brush, and Arthur, with his meticulous blueprints and ordered life, found himself utterly captivated. He saw in her the vibrant spontaneity he unconsciously craved, the uninhibited expression that had long been suppressed within him. Their initial months were a symphony of shared laughter and intimate discoveries, a vivid counterpoint to the monochrome existence he had previously known. He built a mental fortress around their love, believing it impregnable, a sanctuary from the relentless pressures of his demanding profession and the quiet ache of his past. Yet, as seasons turned, a subtle shift began to ripple through their connection. Alara, once so adoring of his calm strength, started to chafe against what she perceived as his emotional distance. Her artistic soul yearned for grand declarations, for tempestuous passions, for a man who would lay bare his every tremor and triumph. Arthur, in his earnest desire to provide stability and quiet support, often misinterpreted her yearning as a need for material comfort, for pragmatic solutions to every passing discomfort. He believed in action, in solving, in building a secure future, while she yearned for presence, for feeling, for the raw, unedited expression of his internal landscape. When Alara spoke of feeling unheard, Arthur would respond with practical reassurances, outlining plans for their future, detailing how he was working tirelessly to ensure their security. He believed he was demonstrating his love, his commitment, but his words, solid and logical, felt like a wall to her, blocking the very emotional intimacy she craved. The initial small disagreements became gaping canyons, carved by a lack of shared emotional language. Alara would retreat, her vibrant energy dimming, replaced by a quiet resentment. Arthur, witnessing her withdrawal, would feel a rising tide of confusion and frustration. He tried harder, working longer hours, buying thoughtful gifts, arranging elaborate dates, all external gestures meant to bridge a growing internal divide. Each attempt, however well-intentioned, only seemed to push her further away, for what she truly sought was not a grand gesture but a glimpse into the depths of his soul, a vulnerable admission of fear or longing. He didn't understand that she wasn't asking him to do anything. She was asking him to be with her, authentically, without the shield of his competency or his quiet strength. One bitter evening, after another unspoken argument had settled like a heavy shroud, Alara's voice, usually melodic, was sharp with a pain Arthur couldn't quite grasp. "You're not here, Arthur," she had whispered, her eyes filled with an unfamiliar despair. "You're never truly here." Her words were a sudden, unexpected shard, piercing the carefully constructed illusion of his emotional resilience. He felt a profound sense of injustice. Hadn't he given her everything? Hadn't he sacrificed his own time, his own desires, to ensure her happiness? His mind raced, cataloging his efforts, his countless acts of service, searching for the flaw in her logic, the misinterpretation of his devotion. Yet, deep within him, a nascent tremor began, a faint, unsettling echo of truth. The next day, Alara was gone. A short, polite note on the kitchen table spoke of her need for space, for a different kind of connection, a love that could meet her in the emotional tempest she often inhabited. The silence that descended upon Arthur's meticulously designed apartment was deafening, amplified by the hollowness in his chest. He replayed their conversations, her gentle nudges, her frustrated outbursts, and for the first time, he saw them not as criticisms of his actions, but as pleas for his emotional presence. He recognized the pattern, a familiar one he'd inherited from his father, a stoic man who expressed love through provision and protection, rarely through raw emotion. Arthur had inadvertently replicated this pattern, projecting his father's archetype of the silent provider onto his own relationships, believing that competency and unwavering support were enough. He wandered through his apartment, his eyes settling on a painting Alara had left behind, a vibrant abstract of swirling blues and passionate reds. He remembered her explaining it, how the colors bled into each other, representing the messy, intertwined nature of human emotion. He had nodded, feigning understanding, but truly, he had seen only a beautiful arrangement of hues. Now, as the silence pressed in, the painting seemed to pulsate with a painful truth. He hadn't allowed his own colors to bleed, to mix with hers. He had kept his emotional palette separate, muted, controlled. The man who could construct soaring skyscrapers felt utterly lost in the ruins of his own heart. The profound emptiness he felt was not just the absence of Alara, but the stark realization of his own emotional barrenness. A desert within him he had meticulously cultivated, believing it to be a strength. The archetype of the king in exile, often seen in the figure of Arthur, embodies a man who holds immense potential for leadership and provision, but finds himself estranged from his own emotional kingdom. He is capable, resourceful, and often seen as a pillar of strength. Yet beneath this polished exterior lies a profound isolation. His pain is an unseen wound, deeply embedded in the societal expectation that men must be providers and protectors above all else, leaving little room for their own tender vulnerabilities or for the expression of their inner turmoil. This societal script, often internalized from early childhood, dictates that emotional displays are a sign of weakness, thus fostering a rigid ego projection where only strength and capability are deemed acceptable. This character's journey is one of profound shadow work, a painful descent into the unacknowledged aspects of his psyche. For Arthur, this meant confronting the deeply ingrained belief that his value lay solely in his ability to provide and protect, rather than in his capacity for authentic emotional connection. The theme here is the tyranny of the unspoken, where emotional suppression becomes a silent killer of intimacy, leading to profound loneliness even in the presence of love. His internal landscape, initially a well-ordered fortress, becomes a desolate landscape because he has walled off the very parts of himself that could connect him to others on a deeper, more profound level. To you, who might find a reflection of Arthur's experience within your own heart, know this: the deepest reservoirs of strength lie not in unwavering stoicism, but in the courage to be vulnerable. Your emotional pain, though perhaps long suppressed, holds the key to your authentic self. It is an invitation to engage in individuation, the lifelong process of integrating the conscious with the unconscious, the public persona with the hidden self. Consider the wisdom of the Stoics not as a mandate for emotional repression, but as a call to discern what is within your control and what is not. Seneca speaks of cultivating an inner citadel, but this citadel is not a prison for your emotions. It is a sanctuary for your true self, built on self-awareness and integrity. The wound you carry, though unseen by others, is profoundly real. It demands your attention, not with judgment, but with gentle curiosity. Begin by acknowledging the validity of your own emotional experience, however subtle or overwhelming it may feel. Permit yourself the radical act of feeling, of naming the loneliness, the frustration, the unmet needs that reside within. This is not weakness. It is the first courageous step toward healing. Your worth is not solely defined by what you do or what you provide, but by the profound richness of who you are in all your emotional complexity. Embrace the messy, unpredictable dance of human connection. Allow your authentic self to emerge, unburdened by the weight of outdated expectations. It is in this courageous unveiling that true love, a love that meets you in your wholeness, can finally find its way home. Has this ever happened to you, where the very qualities that once drew someone to you become the unspoken reasons for their eventual withdrawal? It's a cruel irony of the human heart, particularly for men who are often praised for their strength, their unwavering resolve, only to find these same attributes misunderstood as rigidity or emotional distance in the intimate sphere. The second common aspect of men suffering alone in love is precisely this: the burden of emotional repression, often mistaken for steadfastness, which creates an invisible barrier, preventing true vulnerability and reciprocal emotional depth. They are applauded for being rock solid, until that very solidity becomes a cold, unyielding wall in the landscape of a relationship, leaving them isolated in their supposed strength. In a village nestled amidst ancient, whispering pines, far removed from the clamor of modern life, lived a man named Kael. His hands, calloused from years of working with wood, carved exquisite figures that captured the soul of the forest. He was a craftsman, meticulous and patient, finding solace in the silent language of creation. Kael had fallen deeply in love with Lyra, a woman whose spirit was as bright and fleeting as the dappled sunlight through the leaves. She was an effervescent storyteller, her laughter echoing through the trees, weaving tales of heroes and lovers, of joy and sorrow. Kael, a man of few words, was mesmerized by her vibrant expression, her boundless capacity for emotion. He saw in her a mirror to the repressed vitality within himself, a world of feeling he had long kept locked away. Their early days were filled with a quiet harmony. Lyra would spin her narratives, and Kael would listen, his steady gaze and gentle smile a comforting anchor for her soaring spirit. He believed his presence, his unwavering support, was enough. He offered solutions when she spoke of challenges, provided comfort in the form of practical assistance, and built a beautiful home for them, believing these tangible acts of love spoke volumes. His love was a deep, silent river, flowing beneath a placid surface. He had learned from his stern, dutiful father that true masculinity lay in steadfastness, in providing a safe harbor, never in displaying the tumultuous currents of one's own emotions. This deep-seated belief was his ego projection, a defense mechanism learned early, portraying himself as utterly dependable, sacrificing his inner turmoil for the perceived stability of others. Yet, Lyra, with her storyteller's heart, began to yearn for a different kind of narrative, one in which Kael was not just a silent, supportive presence, but an active participant in the emotional drama of their shared life. She longed for him to share his fears, his dreams, his inner landscape, to weep with her in sorrow and revel with her in joy. She would try to draw him out, asking about his day, his feelings, his hidden thoughts, but Kael would always steer the conversation back to practicalities, to observations about the weather or the village happenings. He thought he was protecting her from his own anxieties, from the complexities he felt would burden her free spirit. He feared that if he showed any crack in his composure, any tremor of vulnerability, he would shatter the beautiful, fragile illusion of strength he presented, and in doing so, perhaps lose her respect or worse, her love. The chasm between them grew. Lyra's stories began to carry a melancholic undertone, reflecting the emotional distance she felt. Her once vibrant laughter grew softer, more infrequent. Kael noticed, of course, but his response was to redouble his efforts in the practical realm. He carved more intricate figures, tended to their garden with even greater devotion, convinced that if he simply did more, if he provided more, her happiness would return. He couldn't grasp that what she truly longed for was not another carved bird, but the bird of his own soul, uncaged, singing its truth. He was deeply empathetic, capable of understanding her pain on an intellectual level, but utterly incapable of reciprocating that vulnerability. This internal struggle became his own private shadow work, an unconscious battle against the parts of himself he had suppressed for so long. One crisp autumn morning, Lyra sat by the hearth, her gaze distant. "Kael," she began, her voice barely a whisper, "do you ever feel anything beyond quiet contentment? Do you ever rage, or despair, or feel so utterly joyful you could burst?" Kael, carving a small deer, paused. He looked at her, his heart a tangle of emotions he couldn't name, let alone express. He wanted to tell her of the quiet anxieties that gnawed at him, of the unspoken fears he carried for their future, of the profound, almost overwhelming love he felt for her that often left him speechless. But the words caught in his throat, a lifetime of repression, a heavy weight on his tongue. He simply nodded, a slight, almost imperceptible movement, and then returned to his carving, the rhythmic scrape of wood against blade, a shield against the torrent within. Lyra's eyes filled with tears, not of anger, but of deep, profound sadness. She rose silently and walked out of the house, disappearing into the ancient forest. Kael found her note later, nestled amongst his tools. My heart yearns for a dance, Kael, not a still portrait. I need a love that breathes, that weeps, that celebrates, that knows its own tremors. I cannot dance alone forever. Her words were a chilling echo of Arthur's experience, a testament to the universality of this unspoken pain. Kael felt a deep, wrenching pain in his chest, a sensation he had learned to numb, to compartmentalize. He looked at his hands, capable of shaping raw wood into beauty, yet utterly useless in shaping the emotional landscape of his own life. The silence of the forest, once a comfort, now felt like a vast, lonely expanse mirroring the silence he had cultivated within himself. He had built a life, a home, a love, only to discover he was a prisoner within his own carefully constructed emotional cage. The forest, which once offered him solace, now felt like a living monument to his own emotional stagnation. The towering trees, a silent judgment on his inability to grow beyond his ingrained stoicism. The character of Kael embodies the hermit archetype in its shadow form, a man of deep internal wisdom and self-sufficiency, but one who has retreated so far into his inner world that he struggles to connect authentically with others. His suffering is deeply rooted in the trauma psychology of early conditioning, where the masculine ideal of unwavering strength and self-reliance was implicitly or explicitly taught, often at the expense of emotional expression. This leads to a profound disconnect from his own anima, the unconscious feminine aspect of his psyche that yearns for connection, emotional fluidity, and relational depth. He sees emotional vulnerability as a flaw, a dangerous crack in his stoic facade, rather than a pathway to genuine intimacy and a more integrated sense of self-worth. The central theme woven through Kael's story is the paradox of strength, how the very qualities celebrated in men, resilience, self-control, and independence, can, when taken to an extreme, become the shackles that bind them in emotional isolation. His avoidance of emotional expression, fueled by a fear of appearing weak or burdensome, became a self-fulfilling prophecy, pushing away the very connection he desired. This is a profound example of how a rigid ego projection can prevent true individuation, as the conscious self refuses to integrate the weak or vulnerable aspects of the unconscious. For those of you who resonate with Kael's silent struggle, recognize that your strength is not diminished by your capacity to feel, but rather enriched by it. The unexpressed emotions you carry are not weaknesses. They are vital parts of your human experience, demanding acknowledgement and integration. Shadow work for you involves dismantling the internalized myths about masculinity that demand constant composure and emotional imperviousness. It is the courageous act of exploring the unspoken fears that keep you guarded, the anxieties that prevent you from sharing your true self. Consider the teachings of Epictetus, who spoke of controlling what is within your power. While he emphasized rational thought, he also implicitly advocated for self-awareness and the mastery of one's inner world, which includes emotional intelligence. Your internal world, with all its complexities, is entirely within your domain. Start by simply naming your emotions, even if only to yourself. Journaling, quiet contemplation, or finding a trusted, non-judgmental space to articulate your feelings can be profoundly liberating. Your worth, your self-worth, is not measured by your ability to withstand every storm without flinching, but by your courage to navigate your inner landscape, to embrace your full humanity. It is in this profound act of self-acceptance that you begin to heal, to dismantle the invisible walls, and to build relationships founded not just on external provision, but on authentic, reciprocal emotional connection. The dance of true love requires two souls willing to move to the rhythm of shared feeling, not just one. What would you think if I told you that the deepest pain for many men in love isn't the grand, dramatic betrayal, but the slow, corrosive ache of feeling perpetually misunderstood, of their efforts and sacrifices going unrecognized or, worse, being actively misinterpreted? This subtle, yet profound, lack of validation often leads to a profound sense of emotional exhaustion and a cynical withdrawal from genuine connection. This is the third, and perhaps most insidious common aspect of men suffering alone in love: the quiet erosion of their spirit when their attempts at connection are met with a consistent failure of recognition, leaving them feeling invisible in their own relationships. They become the strong, silent type, not by choice, but out of a painful resignation that their inner world will never be truly seen or appreciated. In a bustling metropolis where glass towers pierced the clouds, there lived a man named Rohan, a brilliant engineer whose days were spent designing complex algorithms that powered the city's infrastructure. His mind was a marvel of logic and precision, capable of untangling the most intricate problems. Rohan was in a long-term relationship with Anya, a vibrant social activist whose life was a whirlwind of causes and passionate debates. He adored her fierce spirit, her unwavering commitment to justice, and her ability to ignite a room with her presence. He saw in her a vibrant purpose, a stark contrast to his often solitary, analytical world, and he devoted himself to supporting her in every conceivable way. Rohan's love for Anya was expressed through his actions. He meticulously managed their finances, ensuring their stability. He was her rock during her moments of doubt, offering pragmatic advice and unwavering encouragement. He tirelessly navigated the bureaucratic hurdles of the city to secure permits for her rallies and events. He believed that his consistent support, his quiet dedication behind the scenes, was his deepest expression of love. He was the quiet foundation upon which her vibrant life could flourish. He sought no accolades, no grand pronouncements. His reward was seeing her thrive, her eyes alight with purpose. This was a pattern he had learned early in life, a manifestation of the hero archetype in its more subdued, service-oriented form, finding purpose and self-worth in being the reliable, indispensable force behind another's success. However, Anya, immersed in her world of immediate impact and public recognition, often overlooked these quiet acts of devotion. Her sphere of experience was loud, performative, and demanded overt emotional engagement. When she spoke of her exhaustion or her frustrations, she sought fervent commiseration, a shared emotional outpouring. Rohan, in his typical fashion, would offer solutions, point out logical next steps, or simply listen patiently, believing his calm, steady presence was what she needed most. He was embodying a form of stoicism, not of a sage on a mountain, but of a quiet internal mastery, believing that emotional restraint was a virtue, a strength that protected not only himself but also the delicate balance of their relationship. He projected an image of unflappable competence, suppressing any internal anxieties or desires for a more reciprocal emotional exchange. The problem was, Anya interpreted his stoicism as a lack of engagement, his logical solutions as a dismissal of her feelings. She yearned for him to feel with her, to rant alongside her, to share in the emotional turbulence of her work. When she expressed her sadness, and Rohan offered practical advice, she felt unheard, unvalidated. "You just don't get it, Rohan," she would sigh, frustration etching lines around her eyes. "It's not about fixing it. It's about feeling it." Rohan would feel a knot tighten in his chest. He did get it in his own way. He felt her pain deeply, but his way of expressing empathy was through a quiet resolve to alleviate her burdens, to provide solutions, to be a stable anchor in her emotional storms. His love was a deep, still well, but she was looking for a gushing waterfall. Over time, this dynamic wore on Rohan. Each well-intentioned act of service, each quiet demonstration of love, was met with a look of polite confusion or a sigh of subtle disappointment. He began to feel like an invisible hand, meticulously arranging the gears of their shared life, yet never truly seen as a whole person, with his own needs for validation and emotional reciprocity. The feeling that his efforts were unappreciated, that his particular way of loving was fundamentally misunderstood, began to chip away at his spirit. He started to withdraw, not out of anger, but out of a profound weariness. Why open himself up? Why strive to connect in a way that felt unnatural to him, when it only resulted in greater misunderstanding? This constant misinterpretation became a form of psychological trauma, subtly eroding his self-worth. One evening, after a particularly draining day for Anya, she came home to find Rohan had cooked her favorite meal, cleaned the entire apartment, and even organized her overflowing stacks of activist papers. She glanced at it all, then slumped onto the sofa. "Thanks," she murmured, without meeting his eyes. "But honestly, Rohan, sometimes I just wish you'd talk to me. Really talk. About your day, about anything beyond logistics." Rohan stood in the threshold of the kitchen, the aroma of the meal a silent testament to his effort. A profound weariness settled over him, heavier than any long day at work. He had poured his heart into these acts of service, and they were once again invisible. It wasn't just disappointment, it was a sense of utter futility. He looked at the meticulously organized papers, the steaming food, and realized that for all his logical brilliance, he was failing at the most fundamental equation of love. He saw clearly that he was suffering alone in love. He felt like an empty vessel, drained by an emotional deficit he couldn't fill, not because he didn't try, but because his efforts were never recognized in the currency of connection she understood. He began to embrace a quieter, more solitary existence within the relationship, a form of self-preservation born of repeated invalidation. Rohan's experience resonates with the caregiver archetype in its profound and often overlooked pain. He is the one who silently carries burdens, who provides solace and stability, yet often remains unseen in his own emotional needs. His suffering stems from a societal narrative that often reduces men to their utility, their ability to solve problems and provide, rather than appreciating their full emotional spectrum. This constant lack of validation for his unique expression of love and commitment became a form of slow, psychological attrition. His meticulous acts of service, born of genuine affection, were not merely practical. They were his language of devotion, and when this language was not understood or valued, it led to a profound internal despair. This is a classic case of ego projection where the man projects his idealized self as the unwavering provider, leading to the suppression of his inherent need for emotional reciprocity and recognition. The profound theme here is the invisible labor of love, where silent effort and deep care go unacknowledged, leading to emotional depletion. Rohan's withdrawal was not a sign of indifference, but a self-protective mechanism against the recurring pain of misunderstanding. His journey, like Arthur's and Kael's, highlights the necessity of individuation, specifically in recognizing and integrating the need for reciprocal emotional nourishment, a need often relegated to the unconscious for men. This is crucial shadow work, bringing to light the hidden desire for appreciation and connection that contradicts the societal mandate of the stoic, self-sufficient male. To you, who may find yourself in Rohan's silent world of unacknowledged effort, understand that your unique way of loving is valid and deeply meaningful. The pain of feeling invisible, of having your heartfelt gestures pass unnoticed, is a legitimate and profound wound. You are not alone in this. Your capacity for quiet strength and steadfast support is a powerful gift, but it does not negate your equally vital human need to be seen, heard, and appreciated for who you truly are beyond your actions. Draw inspiration from the pragmatic wisdom of Dale Carnegie's principles, not just in how to influence others, but in how to understand and articulate your own needs. True connection flourishes on mutual understanding. Begin by gently yet firmly articulating your language of love. It might feel uncomfortable at first, a departure from your ingrained patterns, but it is a necessary step towards building a relationship where your emotional contributions are not only acknowledged but celebrated. Your self-worth is not contingent on external validation, but in reclaiming your authentic voice and standing firm in the truth of your emotional reality. The healing of this pain lies in the courageous act of asking for what you need, of allowing yourself to be vulnerable enough to express your desire for reciprocal understanding. You possess an immense inner stillness and strength. Now, let that strength extend to articulating your heart's quiet desires. It is in this courageous act of self-advocacy that you begin to heal, to break free from the silent prison of unacknowledged love, and to finally allow true connection to flourish. The culmination of these unseen wounds, the denial of emotional space, the burden of emotional repression, and the corrosive ache of unrecognized effort, reveals a profound societal shadow, one that traps men in a solitude born of expectation rather than choice. The journeys of Arthur, Kael, and Rohan are not merely stories. They are reflections of countless men who navigate the treacherous waters of love, carrying silent burdens, their inner worlds often hidden behind masks of competence and stoicism. Yet, within this landscape of silent suffering lies the potent seed of transformation. The climax of this journey arrives not in a dramatic outward event, but in a profound inner awakening, a quiet rebellion against the internalized scripts that have dictated emotional silence for generations. It is the moment when the unseen wounds are finally acknowledged, not as weaknesses to be hidden, but as pathways to deeper authenticity. For Arthur, it was the realization that his capacity to build external structures needed to be matched by a willingness to build internal emotional bridges. For Kael, it was the recognition that true strength lies not in suppressing the turbulent currents of his soul, but in allowing them to flow, to connect him to the deeper rhythms of life and love. For Rohan, it was the profound understanding that his quiet acts of devotion, while sincere, also needed the counterpoint of articulated vulnerability, a voice to match his unwavering presence. This inner liberation is the essence of individuation, a Jungian odyssey toward becoming a whole, integrated self. It involves a radical form of shadow work, fearlessly confronting the parts of the masculine psyche that have been deemed unacceptable. The need for emotional support, the capacity for vulnerability, the desire for nurturing connection. It is the active integration of the anima, the inner feminine principle that calls for relational depth, empathy, and intuitive understanding, balancing the traditional masculine emphasis on logic and action. This is not about becoming less masculine, but about becoming more human, more complete. The powerful feminist perspective interwoven here is not about diminishing men, but about liberating them from the very patriarchal constructs that demand their emotional suppression. True empowerment for men means freedom from the straitjacket of outdated expectations, allowing them to reclaim their full emotional spectrum without fear of judgment. It is an invitation to redefine strength, to see it not in emotional impermeability, but in the courageous act of self-revelation, in the willingness to be seen, truly seen, in all your glorious complexity. This healing, this journey of rebirth, culminates in a profound sense of inner peace, a peace that no longer seeks external validation, but emanates from a deep well of self-acceptance. It is the peace of knowing your worth, not because someone else acknowledges it, but because you have dared to explore your own depths, to integrate your shadow, and to stand authentically in your truth. It is the quiet power that comes from embracing your vulnerabilities as inherent aspects of your strength, understanding that the greatest relationships are built on shared humanity, not on carefully constructed facades. Your suffering, though solitary, has been a crucible, forging within you a profound understanding of your own emotional landscape. You are now equipped not only to heal your own wounds, but to forge connections of genuine depth and reciprocity. Let go of the need for external validation. It is a fleeting currency. Embrace the power of stillness, the quiet strength found in knowing yourself, truly and completely. This journey of self-discovery is the ultimate act of courage, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to heal, to grow, and to love with an open heart. Believe in the boundless capacity for transformation that resides within you. The dawn always follows the deepest night, and your emotional rebirth is not just a possibility, it is your inherent right. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and share this video with others to spread positive values in life. The end.